It is the consensus of my time, a foundational axiom of the scientific community, that the vampire does not exist, that this clandestine apex predator does not exist. What a profound success for such a creature, to be relegated to myth by its own prey. They do not exist, or do they? In this document, my dear listener, I shall set down the truth. I have delved into the very archives that were meant to be forgotten. These are the suppressed records from a world convinced of its own enlightenment, the clandestine papers of the few scholars who, like myself, dared to question that certainty. As elucidated in a forgotten treatise by an anonymous scholar, the vampire is not a creature of birth. It is, rather, a blood-consuming apex predator, created from a human host by a virulent pathogen. In the most ancient fragmentary archives I have found, this pathogen was designated the human vampiric virus. To honor this lost original author, I shall now adopt this nomenclature. His writings posit that following infection, the human vessel endures an agonizing metamorphosis. This process initiates a widespread atrophy of the internal organs. The heart itself withers completely, becoming a silent, vestigial remnant. Circulation is no longer governed by the heart. Instead, it is propelled by the systemic contractions of the skeletal musculature. This crude mechanism imparts the creature's characteristic pallor and precipitates a drop in vascular pressure. Concurrently, the pulmonary system diminishes, leading to a stark deficit in blood oxygenation. The alimentary canal itself is severely reduced, its structure simplified to process only the sanguine fluid on which it must subsist. In a fascinating paradox, this same withered gut cultivates a unique symbiotic microflora. These biota feed on the sanguine detritus left from feeding and in turn bolster the host's defenses. This process renders the creature virtually immune to common pathogens and even to the insidious decay of prion-based diseases. Much could be said regarding the metamorphosis itself. It is an agonizing ordeal, taking place within a vampiric coma, a state of torpor from which many HVV-afflicted individuals, tragically, never awaken. A principal consequence of this metamorphosis is the development of elongated canines and a profound compulsion for blood. However, contrary to the aforementioned treatise, I do not believe this compulsion is driven by the need for PHCDX protein. This protein, my analysis shows, is expressed exclusively within the brain, and there is no documentation to suggest it can traverse the blood-brain barrier to be available in the victim's blood. A more logical catalyst is their own atrophied physiology. As their internal organs diminish, their pulmonary and digestive systems become profoundly impaired. This leads to a chronic, low-level hypoxia and an inability to metabolize complex nutrients. Their bodies have adapted to this persistent oxygen deficit, relying primarily on anaerobic, fast-twitch muscle fibers. This adaptation comes at a cost: the selective suppression of higher, non-essential cognitive functions when necessary. My findings indicate that vampires can absorb oxygen directly from ingested blood via the alimentary canal. This provides a temporary vital surge in their own blood oxygen saturation, restoring their full cerebral capabilities. This post-feeding state, this sudden recovery from lethargy, is likely the progenitor of the superstition that vampires drain the life force itself. This information permits me to draw a somber conclusion. A A vampire deprived of blood is not merely hungry. They are in a state comparable to systemic suffocation. When this agonizing physical need is compounded by their modified neurotransmitter balance, it creates a physiological imperative so powerful, we as humans cannot truly comprehend it. At this point, let me share a final, startling revelation. Vampires hunt humans not strictly out of necessity, but out of preference. As the species from which they are forged, we remain the most biologically compatible source. Our blood provides the perfect, all-inclusive nutritional profile they require to sustain their fragile existence. It is technically possible for a vampire to subsist on artificial or animal-derived blood, but this would condemn them to a lifetime of meticulous dietary supplementation to account for the inevitable nutritional deficits. This equation changes, however, with the most ancient of the creatures. In these elder vampires, the pulmonary system has atrophied to a point of near total failure. They can no longer extract sufficient oxygen to survive on their own. These beings are, to my knowledge, the most dangerous, as they are compelled to feed exclusively on human blood. For them, it is no longer a preference. It is the only way to simplify their diet and for a few more hours to breathe. Dear listener, let me instead draw your focus to a separate matter. The creatures described until now would be akin to simple beasts, driven by primal instinct, a state born from a profound imbalance in their serotonergic and dopaminergic pathways. I posit, however, that a creature of such evident sapience is less governed by base impulse than previously assumed. This, of course, prompts a logical query. If they exist, why do they remain unseen? A most pertinent question. One hypothesis suggests the virus has entered a dormant phase, compelling its hosts into a protracted hibernation from which they may one day awaken. This forces us to speculate. Will we recognize the moment of their re-emergence? Or, more unsettling, has that re-emergence already occurred? This next hypothesis may test the limits of your credulity, but consider, vampires are masters of concealment. It is possible they are already integrated within our very society. As a separate species, this integration would be imperfect. Consider that individual who inspires a subtle disquiet. They are charismatic, intelligent, their behavior a near-perfect mimicry of the norm, yet some fundamental dissonance remains, a detail you cannot articulate. My own research indicates that these creatures exhibit an anomalous diversity of MHC proteins. This appears to be a consequence of horizontal gene transfer, mediated by the virus as it replicates within and is passed between various hosts. This is likely the mechanism behind the unexplainable, almost pheromonal attraction some individuals report. Furthermore, my findings reveal vampires possess radically extended telomeres and a profound resistance to oxidative damage. This combination grants them a lifespan far exceeding our own, allowing them to retain a youthful facade long after our own has faded. Thank you, my dear listener, for following this inquiry so far. You are likely grappling with a paradox. How can such long-lived beings remain concealed in our society? Allow me to posit a question in return. Have you ever observed an individual in a portrait, an old photograph, who bears an impossible resemblance to someone living today? A mere coincidence, you tell yourself. It cannot be possible, unless, of course, it is the same person. Before you dismiss this as academic fantasy, Consider the hypothesis. I propose that vampires persist within society by periodically staging their own death, only to re-emerge decades later under a new identity, beginning the cycle anew. It is a perilous deception. We must assume many have failed, interred while merely in their state of torpor. That grim possibility may, in fact, be the forgotten origin of those old burial customs, interment face down, or with the hands bound. Following this simulated death, the creature's biology remains active, staving off the natural processes of decay. This very phenomenon is the likely source of the ancient folklore, the incorruptible corpse, the belief in true immortality. But they are not immortal. They simply age slowly, mostly by degradation of internal organs, hidden from the mortal eye. Thank you for listening to those studies, my dear listener. I warn you to be vigilant, as we both are sheep in a flock infiltrated by ever-present wolves. I am worried that we may never be able to be free from their influence. They are among us, and they are watching.